Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, August the 9th, 2024. August the 9th. It can be quite a difficult day, August the 9th, can't it? I mean, if we look back at the past, ask ourselves what happened on previous August the 9ths and how are they relevant to the US? Well, August the 9th, 1945 was the day of Nagasaki, when an atomic bomb was dropped on a Japanese city of Nagasaki. I think that came 3 days after Hiroshima. And I kind of feel that the Nagasaki chart has just never got the attention that the other two charts got, the chart of Hiroshima and also the chart of the very first atomic bomb in the New Mexico desert. What was it, Trinity? But, it was a bit of a first, the Nagasaki atomic bomb. It was the first time that a plutonium bomb had been used against a civilian target. The very first atomic bomb, Trinity, was also a plutonium bomb, but of course it was a test. It wasn't dropped on a city. So there should be something unique about the Nagasaki bomb. And yeah, I do want to look at that. I want to look at what was happening at the time of the bombing of Nagasaki. There are some interesting things going on, and I think the previous new moon really does need to be looked at carefully. And another event, tragic event on August the 9th was August the 9th, 1969, which was the murder of Sharon Tate and others by Manson's followers. Manson himself was not involved. I mean, he wasn't directly involved, but he sort of orchestrated it. And in some respects, August the 9th, 1969 was perhaps the end of the 1960s in a way. The 1960s was already fraying at the edges as this sort of idealistic concept, this era of sort of hope and freedom, and sort of August the 9th brought it all to a crashing end, didn't it? That sort of shock we saw, the results of sort of acid fascism. And that acid fascism is an aspect of the 1960s, isn't it? The idea with acid fascism, perhaps, that there's a dark side to drugs, there's a dark side to LSD. LSD can be used for sort of manipulation, can't it? I mean, I think that was one concept about how the Manson gang worked and how Manson was able to use his influence, that LSD certainly helped. Hence the concept of acid fascism. It's a sort of nice concept, acid fascism. I haven't heard of it, heard it used for a long time. But that's August the 9th, 1969. And of course the 60s, as the 60s moved into the 70s, people perhaps realised that you couldn't get what you wanted through love and peace. The concept of the urban guerrilla and everything else. But I do think that the murder of Sharon Tate and others, we often forget that other people were killed on that day, in the early hours of August the 9th. But in a way, that was the final end of the idealism of the 1960s. But of course, already in 1969, we had a not-so-idealistic president. In January 1969, Richard Nixon became president. And with Richard Nixon, Richard Nixon's interesting, isn't it? There's been a lot of effort to rehabilitate him. I think the Richard Nixon Foundation has got tons of videos with him talking his views, and it's certainly true. If you listen to Richard Nixon now, and you compare him with modern politicians, he really is in a completely different league. But as we know, Richard Nixon's presidency ended in disaster, and he resigned on August the 9th, 1974. And so I think I want to look at that the time he resigned. By the way, he made his resignation speech on August the 8th, but the actual resignation happened the day after. And of course, the moment he resigned, Gerald Ford became president. Yeah, I mean, Gerald Ford was officially inaugurated a bit later, but I think a critical moment is when Nixon resigned, when Gerald Ford became president. And that chart before midday, I think it was 11 something. I will be looking at that chart later in the video, but that chart had its own power, and then we can relate it forward to his defeat by Jimmy Carter in November the 2nd, 1976. So again, you can compare an inauguration chart with an election chart. And I briefly, actually, right at the end, want to look at Biden's inauguration chart and compare it with the chart of November the 5th, 2024, the election chart this year. So there are a few things to talk about, and I just want to perhaps suggest that in the past, August the 9th has not been a great day. That doesn't mean to say that today is going to be difficult, but it's just something perhaps to look out for. Now, I would be very grateful if you happen to like this video, if you were to indicate that you liked it, and if you're not subscribed, I would be really, really grateful if you were to subscribe. I believe around only half the people who watch this video are subscribed. So if you're part of the other half who are not subscribed and you like the video and you enjoy these videos, it would really make a big difference to me if you were to subscribe, because it doesn't cost you anything. Okay, so let's look at what is happening today. So this is the chart for today, set for noon. Now, as far as the pictures are concerned, I know it's the anniversary of Nagasaki, but actually that mushroom cloud up there, I believe it's a mushroom cloud for Hiroshima rather for Nagasaki, but I suppose I just wanted to give the impression it is, or to make it clear that it is the anniversary of a nuclear explosion. Then that's Sharon Tate, who was murdered, what was it, a long time, God, it's 55 years ago today. And there's Richard Nixon, who resigned 50 years ago. It's a half century, isn't it? So exactly 50 years ago today, Richard Nixon resigned. Okay, so this is a picture for today. You can see that the moon is in Libra. It's right in the middle of Libra. If we set this chart for New York at noon on August the 9th, and the moon in Libra is actually quite well placed, because we've got the moon in Libra making a trine to Mars and making a trine to Jupiter. So that in a way is quite fortunate. It allows things to move. There is a sense of movement, not so much emotional movement, but more things moving in terms of ideas and plans, and not any plans, but sort of more social plans. And if we want to talk to people, particularly if we want to talk to people about nothing in particular, we don't have to get into anything too deep with moon in Libra, particularly trine Jupiter. But it is generally fortunate, and we're reminded here that Mars and Jupiter are starting to make a conjunction. This Mars-Jupiter conjunction, the two planets are now 2.5 degrees apart, so they are getting closer. And Mars-Jupiter conjunctions are very much a two-edged sword. I mean, there is a lot of activity with a Mars-Jupiter conjunction. We can put a lot of energy into our various activities, but there's a certain danger that we push things too far. We put too much energy into something, and we might get ourselves into trouble. I mean, it's not as bad as a Mars-Jupiter opposition or as a Mars-Jupiter square, but still, I think we have to be a little careful, and I think a lot of us will be starting to feel that Mars-Jupiter conjunction, especially now when the moon is trining it. It's now, I would have said, pretty active, and also the moon having made the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, the trine to Mars and Jupiter, is making a sextile to the Sun, and moon sextile suns are nice, all things being equal. It's a harmonious aspect. Things are in balance in terms of, the male and the female. They are also in balance, and there's not an opposition here. There's not a square. It's not like a full moon or a new moon. It's a sextile. So we can relate to the world, and it's also quite healthy, moon sextile sun. I think Ptolemy mentioned that when talking about the survival of children, of course, Ptolemy writing nearly 2,000 years ago, survival of children was important, and Ptolemy suggested if children are born with a favourable aspect of a sun and moon, their chances of survival are improved. It's a good sign that a child will make it. I mean, I know that's not so much a concern now, but it just underlies the point that it is a healthy aspect, the moon sextile the sun. So, overall, certainly from a lunar perspective, I think that is all looking good. Now, we should not forget that the moon is in the same sign as the south node. That aspect between the moon and the south node is separating, but it's still there. And I think with the moon conjunct the south node in the same sign as the south node, there's a certain danger that in terms of our own emotions, we are taken in the wrong direction. So we must be very careful about listening to our feelings, going with our feelings. If we go with our feelings, we might go in the wrong direction. We might express ourselves in ways which we really perhaps should have grown out of, or we might be reminded of the past in terms of how we respond to a particular situation. Though, really, it shouldn't perhaps be an especially emotional day for most of us. There's not a great deal of water. I mean, the water signs, we've got Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces. Okay, we've got Saturn in Pisces, that's always going to be there, but there's a certain de-emphasis on water, sort of more of an emphasis on air. We've got the moon in an air sign, we've got Moon, Mars and Jupiter in an air sign, so that does suggest that the emphasis is on perhaps thoughts and ideas, but not really taking anything too seriously. Turning to the heliocentric picture, there are a few things going on heliocentrically, which we possibly need to take note of. The first thing that's going on heliocentrically is that there's Venus, and Venus is trine Pluto. And it's not, I don't think, an especially dramatic aspect, Venus trine Pluto, but Venus trine Pluto, some of us might be interested in issues of control and power, especially in terms of one-to-one relationships. What kind of influence can we have? And also, if Venus is connected with money, then we'll perhaps be thinking more than usual about money and who has the money and who doesn't have the money, who's spending the money. Should we be spending the money? Should someone else be spending the money? And if we feel the need to assert ourselves financially, to make it clear that we don't want other people to take liberties, for example, with our money, then now might be a good time to do it. We also may be able to manipulate other people into giving us money, or organizations into giving us money. That is possible. Obviously, that's not something you should do. You have to look at the morality of the situation. But it's Venus trine Pluto. I don't think it's that dramatic. And we have another trine. We have Mercury trine Uranus. So Mercury trine Uranus is about being able to make an impact through our words, the written word, spoken word. People will listen to us, and I think we can be, if we want, we can be a little bit shocking with what we say. And we do have to be a little bit careful what we say, because there is one midpoint that we need to pay attention to, and it's this midpoint here. It's Saturn. Saturn is on the Mercury-Mars midpoint. So with Saturn on the Mercury-Mars midpoint, conjunct the Mercury-Mars midpoint, our words can be painful. Mercury-Mars. Mercury-Mars is about energetically expressing ourselves, energetically using words. Then you put Saturn on that, then those words can be made quite harsh. And so harsh words could actually be all around us, remembering that this is a heliocentric chart. It's quite impersonal. And so, when you look at what's happening in politics, all sorts of stuff going on in the American elections, and insults being traded left, right and centre, we just may notice that. And at the same time, though, you have to ask, why are people insulting each other? It may be with Saturn, heliocentrically, Saturn on the Mercury-Mars midpoint, that people are insulting each other in a way out of frustration. You're trying to get a message through. You're trying to get an insult through. You're trying to get the world to hear you. You want to tell the world how awful something is, and it's just difficult. So you have to make a special effort to be insulting. So that's how one might try to resist Saturn, by just making an effort to resist it, and so on. In the end, could say something which is a little bit over the top. I mean, I think it's more of a collective thing, but on a personal note, just be careful what you say here. If you're frustrated and you're not getting people to listen to you, there's just a temptation to take things too far and to just be a little bit too insulting. And so a bit of discretion in terms of what is said might actually be a very good idea. Okay, that's the heliocentric picture, and now it's time to look at today from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for today, which is for the 12 signs, which is Friday, August the 9th, 2024. Aries, you're feeling an increasing amount of energy. It almost feels, Aries, that you're getting back into form. You're feeling your power is coming back in a big way, and I think that you're helped by the fact that Mars is starting to move towards a conjunction with Jupiter. Sure, that Mars-Jupiter conjunction is not exact today, but it's happening. And so with Mars moving towards Jupiter, you're becoming more enthusiastic, and you're becoming quite full of yourself, and you're starting to see possibilities which in the past you just hadn't been aware of. Now you're seeing what can happen if you just make the effort. And at that stage, you then have to consider, how are you going to do it? Right now, what is the best way of making your influence felt? I'm not convinced that the best way is to just act off your own bat, to just be selfish, to just forget other people and just to do whatever you think is right. I think it would be better if you made some effort to understand the people you're dealing with. I mean, it is a social issue in most cases, in the sense that if you're trying to assert yourself, if you're trying to make an impression, there's always other people on the other side. At least in most cases, there are other people on the other side, and those other people have to be understood and appreciated. And with the moon in Libra making a trine to Mars, also making a trine to Jupiter, it's through your understanding and appreciation of other people that you can make your impact felt. So do try to understand the dynamics of all of your various social networks. Try to understand people's weaknesses, people's strengths, and consider also which people are most likely to listen to you. Not everyone's going to listen to you. Some people maybe don't like you or don't find you impressive. That's the way it goes, I mean, for all of us. So it might be a good idea, Aries, if you just consider the other person and do make some choices. You can't be all things to all people. You've got to decide which people are most amenable to your power and your message, and then you can act accordingly. And in general, I do think that relationships can work extremely well. It's because you actually do have the capacity to give people space. You're not going to really try to constrain people. You understand that they need space to express themselves. You're absolutely ready to give them that space, and you can't obviously give them too much space. I mean, you can't allow them to take over your life, and you can't allow them to get everywhere. I mean, things still have to be done on your terms to an extent, but it's done on your terms, but with a high level of understanding. So if you get that balance right, then I do think that things can really, really start moving, and I think you'll get the help and cooperation that you need. And in terms of what you're saying, what you're coming up with, I don't think you have any real difficulty communicating. And I think that part of what you can bring to the table is just a general sense of optimism, because Mars is making a conjunction to Jupiter, and you can see possibilities. You're not locked into one course of action, and if you're in a situation where you say something and you feel that it's hitting the wrong note, you'll have the capacity to just change the subject, change the conversation, say something else, keep trying until you hit the right note. And so that's another power you have, to just be able to just adjust your message until you get it right. Now, some Arians are not going to be totally wrapped up with other people. There's always a social dimension to these readings. I sometimes kind of think I take it a bit too far. This assumption that people are always, that you listening to me, that there are lots of people around you, that there are social networks, partners and whatever. But that's not always the case, is it? Some people are hermits. Hermits can come in all 12 signs, and you can get an Aries hermit, and you can be a temporary hermit. And if there's no one around, then I think that the Mars-Jupiter conjunction is still there. It's still about having a lot of energy, and it's building up this energy. And so you may be able to put huge amounts of energy in a very light-hearted, almost fun-filled kind of way into something that's just important to you, and maybe other people simply just don't matter, and you can just get on with your own thing and just accomplish an enormous amount over the next few days. Still, I think it would be useful if you got some support and help from the outside world, but I don't think it's obligatory by any means. Now, one thing I should point out is that by and large, you are pretty rational. You kind of understand what you're doing, but there just may be some moments today when you misunderstand something. I think that you are in the mood for action, and you do want to create change, and I think you're even not just in the mood for action, I think you're actually in the mood for a bit of drama. And it's certainly true that you can create drama, but is it actually the right thing to be doing? There's just some danger that you misunderstand the situation. You're just too hasty. You go piling in without thinking. Even though Mars is in Gemini, Gemini is supposed to be a sign which is connected with thinking, but it may just be that you're on autopilot, and because you're not thinking, you're allowing something else to think for you. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about the collective unconscious, I think. Just some broader collective energy that allows it, somehow you allow it to take over, just temporarily. I'm not talking about anything seriously. I'm not talking about possession or demonic influences or anything, but just something that you're connected to may take you over, and you might just feel you have to do something, and you do it without thinking. You almost do it on autopilot, and as a result, you could just find that you've got yourself into a whole load of trouble because you just weren't thinking. I don't think it's going to happen in most cases, but I just do feel that I do have to warn you about that. And I also have to say that you need to be very aware all day long. You have to be totally conscious of what's happening. And that means, of course, that you should avoid any form of sort of drugs, intoxicants, alcohol. You have to be really together. Because if you're not together, if you're not fully cognizant about what's happening, then there's just some danger that you might drift into something that encourages you to do something else that just could lead to you taking a mistaken initiative, and that would be bad. But I'm just doing this with an abundance of caution. Overall, Aries, it's a powerful day when you can bring everything together and you can make a powerful impact. Taurus, you probably feel that there may be a few things that you just have to work through in your own way. I think that's what you'd like to do. You'd like to have really a fairly organized day when you don't have to worry too much about outside complications, and just things should be as straightforward as possible. And I think that is certainly an aspect of being a Taurus. Taurians don't like too much change, and if everything is in the right place, then Taurians are happy. Though I'm not 100% convinced that is entirely the right approach. The problem is, Taurus, that you might be forgetting the fact that the world in which you live in, indeed the world in which we all live in, is pretty chaotic. Things just happen. You make plans, but the plans just get disrupted just because. And so if you're making fixed plans and you're trying to make sure everything is in order, and you're trying to make sure that people are going to do what they're told, and if you're making you're making appointments, people keep to their appointments. If you're too rigid, then I think it's almost inevitable that you're going to be disappointed. I mean, things could just happen, which force you to just go back to the drawing board. Of course, if you have flexible plans and you understand the chaos of being alive, then that's not going to be a problem. But because you'll just, you'll be able to make some adjustments and you'll do it with good humor. But if you're too fixed, then things could go wrong. So just be aware of that. On the other hand, I think that you're able to consider what is important. And I think at the moment, for example, Taurus, you have a pretty good understanding of money. Money is important at the moment for Taurians. I mean, there is action in Gemini, and Gemini, from a Taurus view, is a financially orientated sign. You've got Mars and Jupiter in Gemini, and I think that you'll be very good at dealing with financial stuff, financial organization, financial details, and you'll just understand what's happening. But flexibility is important. You can't just have a fixed decision about what should be done with money. There's only one way of dealing with your money. There's only one way of, saving money, spending money, investing in money. Just, of course, I'm not giving any financial advice here, but you mustn't have a single-minded view. And but the trouble, I suppose, of a single-minded view can be, for example, that you make investments that are too concentrated. That's one approach. So, and I suppose they always say, doesn't it? They always say how diversification is supposedly important. Although they also say, don't they, if you can put all your investments in one basket, provided you watch that basket very carefully. So I suppose that is another way of looking at it, isn't it? But anyway, I'm not giving any financial advice here. But I think if you make the effort, you can be flexible and intelligent with money, and at the same time, you can be well organized, and you can bring things together in quite an effective way. At the same time, at the moment, I think like yesterday, you are a little bit in too much of a hurry. You want things done, and you want movement, and you want movement on your terms, and that might be movement in one direction using one method, but you certainly want things to happen. But in your rush, you might make a mistake, or you might sort of trip yourself up. And I suppose, sort of on a physical note, you don't want to get yourself into a situation where, I don't know, you might have an accident. I always have to say this. I'm not saying you're going to have an accident. Of course, you're not going to have an accident. But I just have to say that if I see an indication of accidents, I suppose I have to say it, don't I? I mean, that would be negligent of me not to say it. So, whatever you're doing, just play it safe, especially on a physical level. I think I mentioned this yesterday, and it would be nice if every single day was discrete. What would happen yesterday is completely different from what happens today, but there is a continuity from one day to another, and there continues to be just an elevated risk of just being in too much of a rush, too much of a hurry, and then you trip yourself up, or you decide to use some piece of machinery without really knowing what you're doing, perhaps without reading the instructions, or you press the wrong button or something like that, and that could be difficult. But don't worry, Taurus. Just take it carefully. Be careful. Be a little bit flexible, but don't be in too much of a hurry. And I think it needn't be a bad day. Gemini, you are feeling, I think, pretty good. You feel that there's a lot of opportunities now available to you. You know that you're clever. Well, of course, I would say that, being a Gemini myself. But you're clever, and you're creative, and you're intelligent, and you know that you have got a huge amount to offer. And today it really does start to come together. And you're helped by the fact that there's a Mars-Jupiter conjunction now in Gemini, and that Mars-Jupiter conjunction is getting very close. I mean, it's not exact right now, but it will be exact in a few days' time. And so it's high energy, that Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, and so your energy levels, I think, are really starting to go up now. Maybe you're finding that you can do more things. Perhaps you feel maybe you don't need so much sleep. I'm not, but so be careful there. Make sure you do get enough sleep. Geminis can sometimes just play games with their bodies. Geminis can play games like not getting enough sleep. They can convince themselves it's okay. They can play games with their diet. It's a game, almost, I think, with Geminis. Other people take these things more seriously, but there's a sort of a sense in which you can mess around. But I wouldn't recommend that. You need enough sleep, but it just might feel at the moment that you don't need so much sleep. Of course, I must make it clear, you do need so much sleep, but it's just this energy, and you're becoming you're just more active, and you just might feel that finally things are starting to move your way, and that things can happen quickly and suddenly, and with the moon making a trine to Mars and Jupiter. The moon is in Libra, which is an air sign. Gemini is an air sign, and so moon making a trine to Mars and Jupiter, you can just throw everything you've got into being yourself and doing what you're good at. And I think that is important. You don't want to do things that you're not good at. You want to do what you really can do, and that is absolutely the correct thing to be doing. But there may be a little bit of a tension here, because if you were to just entirely focus on what you are good at, what just feels comfortable, you perhaps know that you're good at something. You've been good at it in the past. It's worked in the past, so you do it, and you do it right now. And so why not play to your strengths? But if you entirely play to your strengths, there's some danger that you forget other people. You forget the outside world. You forget where the world is heading. And it might feel great when you're doing something you enjoy. But if you're really enjoying it, you might just lose touch with reality. And it may just be difficult to explain what you're doing to other people. And at the same time, I think that you should try at some level to be a little bit relatable, to relate what you're doing to the other, to society, to people. Let them understand why you're doing what you're doing. Be ready to make a few adjustments, because you want to do something that is accessible. If it's only you doing it, then in the end, Gemini, you might feel alone. So, ask yourself how you can share what you have with others. Because if you just do it on your own, I think at some stages, at the very least, there's going to be a lack of satisfaction on your part. And I know I've so far given the impression that it's a sort of quite a fun-loving day, but I do think there is a serious side to today. I think that it's great to enjoy yourself, but at the same time, you do regard certain things as being important and worthy of considerable attention. And that's good. But if you're too serious, particularly being serious in your creativity, then again, what you're doing is you're shutting the rest of the world out. And you may end up just doing something that but is just you, and I won't say it's selfish, but it's kind of isolationist, isn't it? And I don't think that's where you want to be. It's not a day to be isolated. It's not even a time for Geminis to be isolated. You have to do things which make sense not just to yourself, but also to the world out there. And I suppose that also brings me to the concept of relationships. Relationships can matter, because I suppose it depends on you, doesn't it? But if I were to look at your chart from a perspective of relationships, and I know that different astrologers have different approaches, and that astrologers are under a huge amount of pressure, I think, to talk about people's love lives. I mean, that's just the way it is, isn't it? You always have to talk about that, because that's what people expect. I don't know why, but that's what people think, and so you have to say something. And I suppose if one was an astrologer, and one felt one just had to be as positive as possible, then one would look at what's happening in your chart right now. One would be very positive about love and romance. After all, the moon is moving through Libra. Libra is, from a Gemini view, Libra is the fifth house, and some people say the fifth house is to do with romance. Okay, not necessarily one-to-one relationships. There is a romantic side to the fifth house, and so the moon is in the Gemini fifth house. In Gemini's fifth house, the moon is making a trine to Mars. The moon is also making a trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter is of course ruler of Sagittarius, which is your opposite sign. So you could construct a case here for saying that relationships are going to work very well, your love life is going to work well, there's going to be romance, happiness, and so on. One doesn't want to get involved in hyperbole, though, and one doesn't want to give false hope. But I suppose if you're in a relationship and you want to make that relationship better, then there are opportunities here. Maybe it requires a little bit of levity on your part, looking at fun things that you and your partner can enjoy. And I think that that's actually something that can happen. If you're looking for a new relationship, there are always problems when it comes to new relationships, because there's so much scope here for creating false expectations. But I suppose if there's any day for finding a new relationship, well, I suppose now might be the day. After all, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and it is a very nice aspect. Cancer. I think Cancer, you are quite comfortable today. And I think that you can be really comfortable. And I think that you don't have to feel too guilty about being comfortable. If you're able to just find somewhere that feels right and you can remove the disturbances, I think you will be able to remove the disturbances. I think that you're going to feel grounded in a somewhat complacent way, but still I think that you can find your space, and you can not just feel comfortable in that space, but also feel useful in that space. And you can be doing things which just make you happy, and things that you don't have to explain. You can just perhaps also just drift back into the past. A time perhaps when there was less pressure. And I would have said, yeah, the less pressure there is today, the better. And you don't have to show off, and you don't really have to even tell people what you're doing. And so I think that you're going to probably, in your own way, be able to cover a lot of ground, in a practical sense, but also perhaps in an inspirational sense. And then there is a certain sense here also perhaps of secret pleasures. Whatever those secret pleasures are, Cancer, perhaps you can indulge in them. But Cancer, don't take the view that this is the norm, that it needs to be like this all the time. I mean, I think with Cancer at the moment, there's always this sense of obligation that you have to consider what is expected of you. You have to consider your responsibilities, and for example, your responsibilities in society, how you're going to make your impression, because you have got so much to offer, and if you disappear, then no one is able to benefit from you. And people may feel at a loss because Cancer's not around. Where is Cancer? Where's Cancer gone? And people might send search parties out for you, or whatever. They might call you up. Where are you? What are you doing? But you're quite happy, and the question is, how happy do you want to be, and how content do you want to be? And it may be that as you start to sort of drift back into the past, as you start to sort of enjoy yourself, you might sort of reflect on the world in which you live, and perhaps consider how the things you're doing could have a beneficial impact on others. It shouldn't just be for you. Even if you're spending today on your own doing things you enjoy, I think that at some stage you might sort of have this realization that some of the things you're doing could help other people, and could also be used to improve your overall, status and your position at some stage. Sooner rather than later, I would have said. So, overall, Cancer, I think, you do have permission to do what you enjoy. You do have permission, not to have to worry too much about obligation and responsibility. But I don't think that it can carry on forever. But you know that, don't you? Leo, you continue to be in, I would have said, a very strong and powerful state of mind. You do have a sense of your own strength, and you're very aware of what you can do, and at the same time you continue, I think, to be pretty influential. you can have an impact, and indeed your words can have an impact. So if you want something, you'll know how to bring the words together in order to have sort of maximum influence. And that means that I suppose you mustn't be shy. You might kind of think that there's no point if it's something big that you want, but there's always a way to get what you want. And I suppose, if you have the confidence in yourself, then I think that there's very little you can't achieve, especially in the persuasion department. There's just something about you, Leo, right now that just is somewhat compelling, and you're helped by the fact that the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, it's making a sextile to the sun, and you just know what to say. I don't think you're going to be at a loss for words. And so the words come out, and the things you say really do underline the fact that you're actually a pretty powerful person. And I think that people are going to listen to you, and they're going to respect you. So in one sense, this is really good. It's a day when you're in control. But just because you're in control, doesn't mean that you should be complacent. You have to consider whether it's really the right thing to be doing. Have you got all the answers? Yeah, you've got a lot of the answers, but you haven't got all the answers. And if you reach a stage where you are starting to get complacent, then you might very soon make a fool of yourself. So try, if you possibly can, to listen as well as talk. And if you hear something being said which is quite alien, just is something that is just outside your normal experience. It needn't be what someone else says. It may be something you read on the internet. It just doesn't sound right. It seems completely alien to your expectations. If you get that sense of feeling that something is complete nonsense, it's something you don't want to engage with, then that's a hint that maybe you should be engaging with it, because you don't have all the answers. And we're living in unstable times, and things that seem far-fetched may actually be very real. So be open to that possibility. Even if you're getting a wall of praise, even if you're getting every indication that you have got everything right, even if you're in that situation, perhaps especially if you're in that situation, then just accept that something new needs to be considered. And it might also be something that's quite shocking, as something that is just at odds with who you are. At least it appears to be at odds with your past. But I suppose it's just really all about being open-minded and just considering other possibilities. And I think an open-minded approach will just be appreciated. Though I would have said that you are really well placed today. I must emphasize that the moon is sextile the sun, and moon sextile sun, there is a great balance here, and I think this balance will be appreciated. So if you're with other people, if you're in a sort of group situation, you'll just be at one. You'll be a calming influence, and I think that people will like you, they'll trust you, you're not going to do anything to cause upset. And so really try to take advantage of the situation in a good way, by making other people feel more comfortable. You'll be making, if you do that, you can make yourself feel more comfortable. And at the same time, you can perhaps start aligning yourself to the future. And that sort of goes back to what I was saying, that you've got to be open-minded, aligning yourself and aligning others to the future, and sort of considering what are you doing and where you're going. And by talking to other people, by at the same time being open to new possibilities and new facts, you will be aligning yourself to the future. So I think, Leo, it's a day when you mustn't be complacent, when you mustn't think you're wonderful, even if you are wonderful. And I think that you can be at the center of things, and you can be very positive about yourself and your prospects, and yeah, people are going to like you and they're going to feel comfortable in your presence. Virgo, you probably are quite motivated at the moment. You just know that there are things that are possible, there are things that can happen, and you're ready to start the ball rolling. And it's a kind of a nice situation, because I think that you're realistic about what can and cannot be achieved. There aren't going to be any flights of fantasy, but at the same time, you just have a good sense of where you want to go, and at the same time, you are very optimistic about it. If you think about it, you feel that you actually have the resources that are required to get to your destination. Resources are important, because we often think that we haven't got what it takes, whether it's money or qualifications or knowledge. We sometimes have these kind of doubts, but I don't think you have these doubts. And if you actually look at what you've got enough to get to where you want to go. Of course, you've got to decide where you want to go. You don't want to be too self-critical, and you don't want to change your plans all the time. But there is just, Virgo, this growing sense of enthusiasm that I think you're going to be feeling over the next week, that you've made the right decisions, and that you now are in a position where you can set for yourself a clear target. And if you haven't got a target, then, Virgo, I would suggest that you find a target. Give yourself something to work towards, because once you've given yourself something to work towards, something that is concrete, then I think, Virgo, that you're going to find that things start to move very quickly. And I think you're also going to be helped by the fact that you're going to be quite self-disciplined, and that's a nice balance to your optimism. There's optimism, but there's the ability, I think, to work hard and to ignore distractions. Now, ignoring distractions does matter. Remember, at the moment there's a conjunction between Mars and Jupiter in Gemini. I think for you, this Jupiter conjunction is very useful. But Gemini can be distracted. It can always think about two possibilities. Well, there's this possibility and there's that possibility. Or I'm optimistic, it can work, but maybe it's not going to work. Or maybe, Gemini, I'm listening too hard to an alternative set of opinions and I'm indecisive. But no, right now you have the discipline and you have the focus. And you're able to work hard at something. Now, you're only going to be able to work hard at something, you could argue, if you have a defined target. If you don't have a defined target, then you might work hard at something which is just for the sake of it. Or at worst, your capacity for hard work could be transformed into negative thinking. So that's another reason why, Virgo, you absolutely need to have clear focus. You need to decide where you want to go, what you want, and once you've done that, things will, I think, move. I won't say quickly, because that would be inappropriate. They will just move in a solid, step-by-step way, and you'll very soon get to where you need to go. And on the way, there will be a few changes. You might think that you've absolutely got something, and halfway through the journey, you might realize that things are actually a lot more complicated than you realized. You'll realize that things are double realize there. You'll realize that things are complicated, and at that stage, that's why it's important to have a goal, why it's important to have a target. If you don't have a target, things are too complicated, I'm going to give up. But if you've got a goal, you will find it very easy, actually, to work through the complications, and you'll be able to use your legendary Virgoan powers of analysis to really get to the bottom of the situation, to understand what a complication is all about. You'll be able to unknot it, and then you will be able to sort of move forward. And if we look at it from a long-term perspective, just remember, this is all about making the most of Jupiter moving through Gemini. Jupiter went into Gemini at the end of May. It stays in Gemini for a year, I think. And so Jupiter in Gemini, in the Virgo horoscope, is all about ambition. It's about having goals. It's having a target. And just right now, you are really able to just focus on the challenges and opportunities that Jupiter represents, until the early summer of next year. So now is perhaps a time when you can take an important step forward. So, don't miss the opportunity, and just remember, you've got all you need. Libra. I think Libra, things are looking pretty good. It's not just because the moon is moving through your sign. It is also the fact that the moon is making a trine aspect to Mars and Jupiter. So Libra, you are an air sign, and there's a lot of activity in air signs. Mars and Jupiter conjunction is coming up. That's in Gemini, an air sign. Again, moon is moving through Libra. Libra is an air sign. So there is a sense, Libra, in which you are very much in your element, and because you're in your element, you'll understand the rules, and your behavior is going to be appropriate, and you're unlikely to do anything that's too badly wrong, and there's just going to be a general sense of flow and going with the flow. So try to have a day which is full of ideas, and try as hard as possible to be yourself. Don't have self-doubt. It's not a day for self-doubt, and just consider all of the possibilities that are available, and try not to fix yourself to narrow plans, schedules, even rituals, because that would be a shame. It's a day for being expansive, for really looking at what can be done, looking at what is available. And there are probably more things available than you realize. You might think that you've got everything you need, that there's perhaps a limit to what you can do, but there's more stuff that is within your reach. And you mustn't be afraid of reaching out towards it. And so, if possible, Libra, you'll be really doing as much as possible today on as many different levels. And you should find, I think, that things are just a lot easier than expected. I know that there's a certain tendency perhaps to worry, what if, what might someone say if I do this? Perhaps being overly focused on something material, or what if you create the wrong impression? What if people don't like what I'm wearing? What if people don't like the way I look? Well, there are these background concerns which could hold you up, but you kind of have to move beyond it, because it is a day when you really can just be part of the flow of the universe. You can just go with it all, and it's just so important to have a clear idea that there is something out there, that you don't have to be restricted to what you can see. You look at the brow of the hill, but there might seem to be nothing beyond the brow of the hill, but there actually is something beyond that brow of the hill, just because you can't see it. Now, Libra, it is really important that flow means allowing things to happen naturally, just going with this flow. It's not something that has to be forced. It's not something where you have to get involved in an argument, where you have to break something down. If you get into that kind of situation where you feel you have to force it, or risk getting involved in a confrontation, then something's gone wrong. You haven't used what's available today in the right way. And as soon as you start to force things or use excessive amounts of energy, at that stage you might run into trouble. I mean, this shouldn't happen. But if you do find yourself getting annoyed, you feel that you're up against resistance, then rather than keep going, you need to stop what you're doing and just maybe tell yourself that you've got it wrong, because you're perhaps just taking it too seriously. Or perhaps you've just got caught up in got caught up in the wrong detail, because it's not really a day about details, and that is going to be a little bit difficult, perhaps because Venus is in Virgo. Venus is your ruler, and there's perhaps a certain temptation to get caught by your ruling planet. There are different energies impacting on you, and the Venus in Virgo is trying to tell you that you've got to be serious, because it's Venus in Virgo. You've got to make sure that you've sorted everything out. You've got to make sure that you're not going to get stuck, and you don't want to take risks. But if you get too caught up in the Venus in Virgo archetype, and it is an archetypal energy, really, isn't it? It's out there, and Venus in Virgo has an association with you, but it's not the whole you. At least today, it's not the whole you. I think perhaps you need to focus. You need to focus more on the fact that the moon is in Libra, rather than the fact that Venus is in Virgo. And by focusing on the the moon in Libra, it's just going to make things a lot easier for you. Don't worry if you haven't got it absolutely right. Don't worry if you don't entirely understand what the underlying details are. It doesn't matter. You have to ask yourself, where is the flow? How are you going to make the most of today's energies? And today it's an air day. Moon is in Libra. It's trine Mars in Gemini. It's trine Jupiter in Gemini. It's about ideas. It's about allowing these ideas to flow, and it's just about just considering possibilities, but never at any stage forcing things. You must not force things. If you force things, or you have to use inappropriate amounts of energy, then yeah, something's going wrong, and yeah, something could break. That is possible, but it needn't happen. Just go with the flow, go with the line of least resistance, and Libra, you'll be fine. Scorpio, you are in a kind of a deceptive position in terms of how you are perceived. I think that there is a certain tendency by the rest of the world to underestimate you. You may not be entirely visible, and there may be moments when people just forget you exist. And perhaps if you're a Scorpio, that's the way you like it. You don't really like being centre stage all day long, and if you are being ignored and discounted, then that's great, because Scorpio, that gives you freedom. No one's going to ask you questions. No one's going to regard you as being a threat. And you can just quietly get on with whatever you have to do. And in fact, Scorpio, you are very energetic at the moment. This energy does not appear, doesn't show, but it's there, it's happening. And this is because Mars, which is your ruler, remember Mars rules Scorpio, it's not Pluto. Mars is moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. This Mars-Jupiter conjunction is not exact, but it's getting stronger, and you're just feeling more and more energized, but in quite a private way. It's not something you want to talk about. It's just happening at a very subtle level, but you can certainly feel it. And at the same time today, the moon in Libra is making a trine to Mars, and it's making a trine to Jupiter as well. So Scorpio, it might actually be a very good day for doing things which are of a somewhat secretive nature. You just don't have to advertise what you're doing. In fact, you shouldn't advertise what you're doing. You don't want to reveal your plans, plus you don't want to be disturbed. If you tell people what you're doing, they're going to interfere, they're going to make suggestions, they're going to perhaps say things which make you doubt yourself, and that's not what you want, not what you need. Also, if you were to tell people what you were doing, they might feel threatened. And again, that's not something you want to do. Though it's very important, Scorpio, that you are very sane today. You've got to be sane. And you've got to have a strong sense of focus and responsibility. Just because you've got a lot of energy, just because actually you're becoming quite lucky, doesn't mean you can't make mistakes. So if you were to make a mistake today, why would you make a mistake? Well, I think you would make a mistake because of a lack of concentration. Just at a key moment, you could be distracted, or even thrown into a place where you're just not quite with it, where you almost lose conscious awareness of what's going on, just for a split second maybe, but a split second where you could make some kind of mistake. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that you're going to pass out or anything. No, I mean, I'm kind of seeing it in a more sort of symbolic way. It happens to all of us, doesn't it? We're doing something, we've got a lot of concentration, and suddenly we're somewhere else, and we're not thinking straight, and in that period of lack of concentration, we could lose a great deal. So that means, Scorpio, you've got to be very mindful, and you've got to do everything you can to stay mindful. So, for example, you don't want to be distracted. If you have to talk to people about subjects you don't want to talk about, that could distract you. If you drink, that could distract you. I mean, even, one glass of wine could spoil everything. Or I don't know, if you're in a state, in an American state where marijuana is legal, like this state, Washington State, one joint and that's it. So you've got to be very sane, and alcohol, recreational drugs, I would have thought that's absolutely out of the question, because you just need to be very, very focused on what you're doing. But if you can maintain that focus, and you can maintain your discretion, discretion is important, and in terms of other people, it's on a need to meet basis, need to talk basis. If you need to talk to someone, sure, you need to talk to them. If you need to meet someone, okay, it's needed, it's required. But if it's not needed, then don't bother with it. And the more self-reliant you can be today, then I think the more successful you'll be. Sagittarius, you continue to have to consider. You continue to have to consider other people and your interactions with them. I don't think this is easy to avoid. I think that right now you are a social animal, and what people do and their actions are going to have an impact on you. So that means that you can't really have a sort of a distanced approach. You might like to keep your distance, but if you keep your distance, then you're not going to be in tune with what is actually happening and what is actually influencing you. So in fact, it might be a good idea, Sagittarius, if, as far as possible, you are in the center of things. I think that if you have the opportunity to be with people and to be sociable and to spend time, with another person, whether it be friends or a partner, I think you should take advantage of this, because I'm fairly confident that you're going to benefit, and also you will understand what's going on. If you were to distance yourself from others, then they'd still have an influence, but then you wouldn't know what was happening, and you would perhaps have less control. So, Sagittarius, really try to make yourself available, and I think in most cases invitations should be accepted rather than rejected. And if you get a chance to talk to people, then avail yourself of that opportunity, because it's through other people that you can just get a sense of movement, of action, and also a sense of control. I suppose that matters to some extent, being in control. So that should be fairly easy for you. I don't think social interaction is going to be difficult at all. Just remember that the moon is in Libra. I mean, Moon in Libra is actually quite a sociable place for the Moon, arguably the most sociable place. And the Moon in Libra is making a trine to Jupiter. And of course, Jupiter is your ruler. And so there is that flow there. But it's not that you have to get completely carried away. That is absolutely unnecessary. You're part of the flow so that you can actually understand what's going on, so that you can actually understand the human dimension. But you kind of have to make sure that you just don't go too far. So you go with the flow, you engage with as many people as possible, but at the same time, you are keeping in mind what you are all about, what makes you special. So you understand what makes you special. You understand what makes you a creative individual, and what makes you different from other people. You understand all that. You accept all that, but still, you try your hardest to interact, and perhaps in the process of interacting and being with people and socializing, you may actually get a sense of what makes you different. Because, if you're alone, it's very difficult to know what makes you different because you don't have any reference point. But today, you can give yourself loads of reference points. And by understanding what people can do and what people can't do, and perhaps by understanding their weaknesses, you understand your own unique purpose, your own unique mission, and perhaps what you are required to do. So I think that is something that is very important. And while all this is going on, deep down, you will have a great sense of realism, and you will see what can go wrong. You'll absolutely understand it. And I'm continuing what I was saying yesterday. I think that there is a grim realism to Sagittarius, which I think you were picking up yesterday as well. You understand that everything has its limits. That if things continue as they are, in the end, things will come to a crashing halt. Things will go wrong. You understand all this, and it just may be something that you don't really need to talk about at the moment. It's more about just experiencing it, but never ever losing sight of who you are and what your unique mission actually is. And at the same time, you're not going to forget what it's all about. You're not going to forget your own responsibilities. And I think that while you can appear to be completely available, socially available, at the same time you're not forgetting about everyday things that need to be done. So in a way, Sagittarius, you are incredibly flexible today. You're able to multitask, and at the same time your mind is able to be working on different levels. On one hand, you're able to be sort of light and appear to be quite frivolous. On the other hand, you're totally aware of your responsibilities, and you are completely aware that however good things are, they're going to come to an end. And so you're able to really bring it all together in an incredible way, in an incredibly Sagittarian way. And that is what Sagittarius is about at its highest level. It's about understanding how things are linked and really being a universe in a single person. So Sagittarius, in that sense, I think it could be quite a special day when you can maybe cover a huge amount of ground, and you can remain true to yourself. So yeah, it's a good day. It's a very good day, I think, and I just hope you're able to make the most of it. Capricorn. Capricorn, you have a sense of ease today. Things are easier today. I mean, I think they were getting easier yesterday, but I think they're even easier today. I think that in some respects you can use what you're good at, what you know you're good at, and it can just run easily. You've got an ability, you know how things work, and you just carry on with it. And there may not actually be a requirement to do much thinking. Once you set yourself on a particular path, everything else is easy. Everything else is just obvious, and you're going to just feel that you don't have to ask any questions. Things are clear, and so it may be a day that actually isn't particularly stressful. But at the same time, it's a day when you can actually do an enormous amount. And you can do an enormous amount because just everything is easy. And I don't think that there will be much in the way of pressure. And in a social sense, I suspect that there's going to be a high level of cooperation. You know, as a Capricorn, you can be quite demanding. You expect people to behave in a particular way. And today, I think that by and large, people will behave as expected. And they might even go beyond that. They may actually give you a certain sense of encouragement. You may be pleasantly surprised by how people behave and how people respond, and there may be a certain sense of responsibility to other people's behavior, but responsibility which is not boring responsibility. There's also going to be a sense of optimism, and so you can see in terms of other people's actions and behavior new possibilities. And if things are good today, then things can be better in the future. And so it may be, Capricorn, that today you're able to sort of rediscover your trust in human nature. I don't know whether you ever had any trust in human nature. I mean, all things being equal, I suppose Capricorns are not particularly trusting. They sort of have an understanding of human frailty and human flaws, but there is a lot to be optimistic about, and at the same time, your social skills are probably relatively good at the moment. I think that you have a good understanding of other people. You can sort of read their minds. I mean, not entirely, but you can get some insights into what people are thinking and feeling and what their motivations are, and perhaps even what their weaknesses are. You pick up on that. And by responding accordingly, you can perhaps get their trust. Because if you understand another person's weakness, then you can respond in such a way that you demonstrate this understanding, and then as a result they are going to trust you. So that I think is just going to add to your overall effectiveness. Now, you mustn't, though, Capricorn, be in too much of a hurry, and I think this applies particularly if you are working or in terms of your business, assuming that's relevant to you. But if that is relevant to you, don't take things too seriously in the career department. It's true that it can be a successful day, but if you take things too seriously and you regard the achievement of particular particular aims, targets, deadline, you've got deadlines and you're thinking about that and you've got to achieve things by a particular time, and if there's a hurry there, then things might go a little awry, pear-shaped. There could be mistakes and even sort of mishaps, accidents, misunderstandings. All of that is possible, and that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't take away from what really should be a good day. But don't get caught caught by some kind of obsession with short-term success. There is a tendency there. It just, as I said, it needn't happen, but the tendency does exist. And if you push things too hard, which will be completely unnecessary, it's not a day for pushing things hard. Just you need to have a relaxed approach, and that's how you're going to make the most of the day's energies. But if you do happen to push things too hard, maybe you're a Capricorn, perhaps with a type, what do they call it, type A personality, push things too hard, then you're going to hit resistance. And yeah, there could be a situation where just something goes badly wrong, but it absolutely needn't happen. And it is perhaps all about being sensitive and not being in too much of a hurry. And so Capricorn, if you can harness the day's energies correctly, then I really don't think there's much to be worried about. Aquarius. Everything is flowing quite nicely because we have a lot of activity in air signs. Remember, Aquarius is, of course, an air sign, and we've got the moon in Libra. Libra is an air sign. We've got Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, and the moon is making a trine to Mars. It's making a trine to Jupiter, and so really things are moving really quite nicely, and you can be really creative, and you can do things that are important to you, and at the same time you can discover more information. You don't have to be satisfied with what you've got, because it is a day for discovery. So don't limit yourself, and also just accept that there's no need to really push things, because it's all about this trine between moon trine Mars, moon trine Jupiter, and of course the moon is making a trine to Aquarius in a general sense, and Mars and Jupiter are making a trine to Aquarius. So you've got the air triangle is all together. Gemini flows into Libra, flows into Aquarius, and so things should just move very easily. And you really don't want to force things, and that's the way to really make the most of what's going on. And from a point of view of energy, I think that there is something that you're getting increasingly excited about, or at least there should be something that you're getting increasingly excited about as Mars starts making a conjunction to Jupiter. It's perhaps relates to something you're good at, and also something that you enjoy. Enjoyment does matter to Aquarius. I understand that Aquarius is a sign that's ruled by Saturn, but enjoyment, there is a place for enjoyment, and it's a time when you really need to do something that is fun. And if you're not enjoying something, then something's wrong. But I think that over the next few days, really focus on something which you find fun, enjoying, and fulfilling. And I think at the moment you're with the moon moving into Libra, moving through Libra, you can sort of expand this activity. So you may have thought that something you were doing can only be used in one area. You might have thought perhaps it was a specific skill, and it was only useful in one area. But you may actually realize that it's useful in another area. And that could be relevant in all sorts of ways. You perhaps thought that maybe you thought something was just a hobby or an interest or a narrow interest. And then you actually realize that actually it's not just a hobby or a narrow interest. It's something that can be used in, I don't know, in your work, or it could be in terms of how you relate to friends, finding new people, engaging with society. So it could be used in many different ways. So don't limit yourself. And perhaps that's part of what's going on today. It's about finding ways to break past some of the limits that you have recently been imposing upon yourself. I mean, I suppose it makes things easier if we can create limits for ourselves. We want to be able to contain everything, but sometimes limits can really be a straitjacket, and you really don't want to straitjacket yourself, because there are just so many possibilities, and one skill can be transferred into many different directions. So I think that is really positive. So I think that today also is a time when it's going to be quite important for you to have good self-regard. Perhaps, recently you've had sort of doubts about yourself, and quite petty doubts that really shouldn't have been worried about. Doubts maybe about how you present yourself, what you look like, those kind of doubts. Doubts in terms of self-consciousness. And I think that today you have a chance to sort of address these doubts and to sort of recognize that you are great, you are attractive, you look good, and that's going to help with everything else. It's all about perceptions. And so, with this confidence and confidence in who you are, what you look like, what you can do, I think that everything should really come together. So I think, Aquarius, if you have the right attitude, then it looks like being a very good day. Pisces, you continue to be cautious, I think, and there's always good reasons to be cautious. We do live in dangerous times. We all live in dangerous times. All 12 signs live in dangerous times, and Pisces seems to be at the moment very realistic. I know Pisces has a reputation perhaps for being all over the place. I think that's a probably unfair reputation. And this sense of realism is still very much there. And you just know what can go wrong. You can imagine what can go wrong. And in fact, Pisces, I just think that puts you in a very strong position. You might feel that you are more cautious than other people, and that caution is a problem. I mean, caution, people say negative things about being cautious, but it's great to be cautious, because you just see things that other people don't see. So it is, I know, it is a continuation of yesterday, but, with these forecasts of the 12 signs, that is inevitable. I really must make this clear. A day is not a discrete unit. One day flows into another day. Thursday flows into Friday, and this caution and this understanding of what can go wrong is very much with you today as it was yesterday. But there is a bit of a change going on. The change is that you're becoming, I think, more assertive. I think there was a certain passiveness building up. You didn't want to make waves. You didn't want people to know about the way you were feeling, and you might have felt that it was just best to not say much. But I think that things are changing now. Mars is moving towards a conjunction of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is your ruler, and Jupiter rules Pisces. It's not Neptune. And Mars it's getting close now. It's, I think about sort of 2.5 degrees between Mars and Jupiter. And I think you're beginning to be aware of a change. I think you are becoming more energized. And there may be certain things which in the past you just let go, you didn't want to say anything about it, but now you're feeling that maybe there's something you need to do. You need to take action. Now, that might well be linked with some of your negativity. It's all very well thinking that things are going to go wrong, that the world is collapsing. It's all very well having those thoughts. But what actually are you going to do about those thoughts? And those thoughts might actually be very useful because you have this great advantage. You have this advantage of kind of knowing where it's all going. And at some stage you've got to actually take the advantage. And that's perhaps where the Mars moving to a conjunction of Jupiter is. And I think that this Mars moving to a conjunction of Jupiter may be about looking after your own interests, taking focused action in terms of protecting yourself. And it may be difficult to be focused because Mars and Jupiter are in Gemini. One doesn't see Gemini as being a particularly focused sign. But perhaps it's about having a little bit of flexibility here. It's not just about one thing that's going to make you feel safe and secure. It's about a couple of things, bringing things together, and also always giving yourself choices. So it's sometimes seen that if you make yourself safe, you're giving up opportunities, but that's not necessarily true. In a sense that by making yourself safe, you're creating new opportunities. Because if you feel safe, that means that you feel safe to be able to do new things, because you've covered your basic securities, and that means that you can move out and start doing different things, perhaps even being eventually more adventurous. Okay, not today. I don't think today is a great day for being adventurous, but I think Pisces, you are perceptive, and I think that you have a keen sense of self-interest. I don't think that you necessarily have to be a great humanitarian today. I think that is optional, but I think that if you want to discuss what's on your mind and tell people about your concerns, I think people are going to be better able to listen to you at the moment. I think you're not the only serious one, and I think that you can get other people to take you seriously. And so if someone's prepared to listen, well, you tell them what's on your mind, and perhaps you can get some useful feedback. So that's it, Pisces. It's another quite serious day, but as you can see, there is definitely a constructive side to it. Okay, those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and now I want to look at today from the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 34, which is the power of the great. And this hexagram is about our own power. And it's suggesting that actually we have quite a lot of power. And this power has been mounting up for some time. And the image one might get is, I suppose, of a ram, which I Ching, I think the Wilhelm translation of it, I Ching, talks about a ram that's now got its power and is ready to break out of its enclosure. And that just might be how it feels. We've reached this point where, you know, something has to give, and we've got to really start to expand our horizons. And perhaps this links with the fact that today we've got Mars is conjunct Jupiter. It's a very powerful conjunction, and it's about energy, action. And then we've got the Moon in Libra. Moon is making a trine to Mars. Moon is making a trine to Jupiter. So that's all about the power starting to unleash. And the I Ching is warning us, though, that this power on its own just could be a little bit uncontrollable. And it's not enough just to take action, just take action for the sake of it. That's not the right approach. We need to take action and consider what is actually the correct thing to do, what is morally correct. You know, action for the sake of action is basically worse than useless. It's going to get us nowhere. And, you know, we might find, if we don't make some effort to restrain ourselves, that, yeah, we might, you know, the spirit might certainly be willing, but when we actually engage with the world out there, it just might not be good enough. We might just expend all our energy in terms of trying to achieve something and actually not really getting anywhere. So we have to do what is right. That matters. And you know, there is a danger that we just get too enthusiastic here. We just get excited about things, and without any real prospect of success. And it's because we don't really have any firm targets. We're not focusing on anything. We're not able to really concentrate our power. And so it may be a good idea to certainly to have focus, and to just consider the constraints of whatever situation we're in. You know, there may be people out there who are perhaps above us, have more control than us. We have to take into account their views, and we have to take into account the world for what it is. And in some cases, it might be a good idea to act under someone else's authority. Now, that doesn't sound really what we want to hear, does it? But remember this is I Ching. The I Ching is really into hierarchies. And so perhaps if we're acting under someone's authority, whether it be the family or the workplace or whatever, we are perhaps going to be more effective. You know, when we do have a sense of instructions, when we're able to act within yeah, within some broader structure. I think that's going to be a better way of approaching this. So, I mean, it's not that it's a bad hexagram, the power of the great. It's just a hexagram where, you know, we've got power. That's good that we've got power. But the question is, what do we do with that power? And just power and energy without any focus is just going to be worse than useless. And it just goes back to the fact that we've got this Mars conjunct Jupiter forming, and it's being activated by the moon is trining Mars and Jupiter. And Mars and Jupiter as a conjunction can be about just plain energy going all over the place and accomplishing nothing, or just worse still, just causing accidents, mishaps, things going wrong. So I think a bit of discipline here is required. Now, we do have a moving line, and the power of the great does move to a different hexagram. And the hexagram it moves to is abundance. And the indication here is that perhaps we're going to be able to manage to use our power correctly, to get what we want, and perhaps we are going to find the discipline in order to do it. And then at a certain stage, abundance, this is a time where things are really coming together. Everything is here. We're at the peak of something. The abundance represents the sun at midday. The sun is not going to get any higher in the sky at midday. But, you know, do take advantage of the situation, because the opportunities are here. It just feels that we're at the peak of something, and we're able to finally find a way of using our power and our energy to get results and to get appreciation. And we may just feel that we're part of something, and, you know, we should really enjoy that, because with abundance, it's not perhaps going to get any better. You know, inevitably we're going to get decline, because it happened. Growth and decline is just part of the natural cycle. So do take advantage of it. See what opportunities are here. We can find a way of actually using our energy in an incredibly constructive way, and just use it while we have the chance, because soon things are going to change, and we're going to have to take a different approach. We're perhaps going to have to withdraw, keep our energy to ourselves, and that's just part of the natural cycle. And now it's time to look at August the 9th. August the 9th, 3 events that I wanted to look at today. And the first event I wanted to look at was the atomic bombing of Nagasaki. So here is the chart of Nagasaki, and let's see, where is it? Okay, here it is. So this was the second atomic bomb. I suppose this was the bomb that immediately sort of preceded the Japanese surrender. And it was a plutonium bomb. The Hiroshima bomb was a uranium bomb. And so this was the first time a plutonium bomb had been used against a civilian target, because the first plutonium bomb in the New Mexico desert was just a test, and no one was immediately killed by this bomb. I don't know about the fallout, but that's the chart for it. And it's just not as dramatic as the Hiroshima chart. You know, the Hiroshima chart had Uranus exactly on the midheaven, uranium bomb right on the midheaven. It was an airburst, and so it was, i.e., the bomb exploded right above Hiroshima. But we don't have this this great symbolism here with the Nagasaki bomb. Now, in terms of midpoints, the sun, there is a sun, and the sun was exactly on the Venus-Jupiter midpoint. And in a way, that kind of, it tells us what it was like from an American perspective. From an American perspective, I suppose the bombing of Nagasaki was successful. So you could say Sun conjunct the Venus-Jupiter midpoint is, I suppose, a happy event, was it? Well, it wasn't really a happy event, but it was certainly a successful event. And I suppose it was successful in terms of finally bringing the war to an end. I mean, I'm not a great expert on all the diplomatic toings and froings that were happening in August 1945, but that's the Sun on a Venus-Jupiter midpoint. Now, when you're looking at a bomb like an event like this, you've also got to consider the ascendant and the midheaven. So, what was linking with the ascendant and the midheaven? What made this chart special in terms of the ascendant and the midheaven? Well, if you look at the hypothetical planets, so if we turn on the hypothetical planets, then and we add some hypothetical planets to it. So Hades is, if you look at Hades, here's Hades. So Hades, hypothetical planet, which is associated with death and graveyards and perhaps really sort of dramatic events like this. Hades was right on the descendant. And so that kind of fits, doesn't it? I suppose this descendant might be the enemy, the Americans dropping a bomb on Nagasaki. Also, the ascendant midheaven midpoint is, there's the ascendant, there's the midheaven. So the ascendant midheaven midpoint is at about 9 Virgo. So Hades was sesquiquadrate the ascendant midheaven midpoint. And so, to an extent, that sort of gives us an idea of the time and the place. And that's what the ascendant midheaven pair is. So, ascendant midheaven pair is a time and a place. You've got Hades on the ascendant midheaven midpoint, and that's telling you what was happening at the time and the place. It was about mass destruction. And so, I think that that certainly tells us a lot about what we want to know about this bomb. Now, there's also the question about how does this link with plutonium? With the Uranus, with the Hiroshima, Uranus with a uranium bomb, Uranus was exactly on the midheaven. So, how does this link with the element plutonium? So, ideally, we would want Pluto to be exactly on the midheaven because Pluto rules plutonium, and I'll show you the chart to demonstrate that in a moment. But Pluto rules plutonium, and so we would want, as far as possible, for Pluto to be on the midheaven. Now, Pluto is not on the midheaven. I mean, it's in the 10th house. It's not as if Pluto is completely unprominent. Mars is sextile Pluto. Pluto's kind of square black moon Lilith. But Saturn is actually closer to the midheaven than Pluto. So it's not entirely convincing, that connection between Pluto and the bombing. I mean, it's okay. It seems relatively prominent in the 10th house, but it's not, I don't know, I don't regard it as being quite good enough. So what I thought I'd do is I would look at the chart for the isolation of plutonium. So plutonium as an element, plutonium as an element just so important for nuclear weapons. Yeah, sure, you can make a nuclear weapon with uranium, but plutonium is a lot more effective. And this is a chart for the isolation of plutonium. And this chart is for December the 14th, 1940, and I've gone for 8 p.m. I believe it took place at 8 p.m. And it took place in Berkeley, California. And this is really a very simple and incredible chart, because if 8 p.m. was the time at which plutonium was isolated, and I believe that is the time it was isolated, I think there's the astrologer Nick Colostrum did some work on this, and he looked at sort of elements and astrology, and he pointed out the chart for the isolation of plutonium, and the ascendant was at 440 Leo. Plutonium was at 4 Leo. So that kind of fits perfectly, sort of Pluto rising, plutonium coming into being. It was isolated at this time. And so that does fit extremely well. So does the bombing of Nagasaki in any way link with the discovery of plutonium? So I've got on the inner wheel, I'm not saying it does, by the way, I'm just looking at the chart just to see if there's any connection here. So on the inner wheel, we've got the timing of the Nagasaki bombing, and sorry, I've got it the wrong way around. Hang on, let me just fix that. I want to put the oh, that's right. Okay, no, that's actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to see if there are any transits to plutonium, but at the time of the Nagasaki bombing. So the ascendant at the time of the Nagasaki bombing was at 2326 Libra, and the IC at the discovery of plutonium was at 2307 Libra. So the ascendant and the IC were connected, which I think is perhaps of some interest. And also the sun at the time of the Nagasaki bombing, the sun was at 1607 Leo, and Mars was at 1611 Scorpio when plutonium was isolated. So we do have a couple of transits there. I'm not saying, by the way, that those transits are particularly impressive, but I just thought it would be useful to compare the two charts. Now, turning back to the Nagasaki chart, it's always a good idea to look at other things going on, like the fact that there was a new moon just before Nagasaki. So the moon was on Regulus when at the time of the atomic explosion on Nagasaki. So there had actually been a new moon the day before, and so this new moon is going to be relevant. We need to look at this new moon, and this new moon, remember, was not just the new moon before Nagasaki. This was the new moon before Japan's surrender, because Japan surrendered very quickly afterwards. So this is a new moon. New moon was at August the 8th, 1945, and I have set it for Nagasaki. And what is really interesting about this new moon is that it was at 15 degrees 6 minutes Leo. Now, I talked about 15 degrees Leo yesterday. So 15 degrees 6 minutes Leo, it is exactly halfway between the summer solstice and the spring equinox, exactly halfway, 15 degrees Leo. And so because it's on 15 degrees Leo, that becomes a really important new moon, because it's exactly 45 degrees from the Aries point. And looking at the midpoints, that means obviously that Aries is hitting the Sun Moon midpoint. And then if you look at the midpoints of there's the Mars. Let me make this a bit bigger. Aries is the Aries point is exactly square the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So you had the time of this new moon, the Sun is semi-square the Mars-Saturn midpoint, the Moon is semi-square the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and the Aries is square the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So going back to the chart, there's Mars, there's Saturn. So Mars-Saturn midpoint is pretty much on the solstice point at 0 degrees Cancer, and North Node is so Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and the North Node is semi-square the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So that does give a sense of death and destruction, but it's not absolutely perfect, because it's not fixed on the ascendant and the midheaven of Nagasaki. How would we associate this with Nagasaki? And one thing, though, that is on the midheaven is Venus. Venus is exactly on the midheaven at the time of the new moon, before the Nagasaki bombing. So let me just show you that in terms of astrocartography. And so if we take, if we look at the horoscope, if we look at a map of Japan, here is Venus. Here's the Venus line, and you see it goes for that new moon, and that Venus goes exactly through Nagasaki. I think Nagasaki is here. And so what does that mean? Now, I'm going to mix my symbolisms here to try to make sense of what that Venus on the midheaven means. This was a chart relating to victory. Victory happened following the bombing of Nagasaki, America's victory. And the Roman goddess of victory was Victoria, and I believe the Greek equivalent of Victoria is Nike. Now, strictly speaking, the Roman god of victory, the Greek god of victory, is associated, I believe, with Athena, with Pallas Athena, and I know that there is an asteroid connected with this. Obviously, you've got Pallas, with one of the asteroids. But I'm kind of suggesting, and this may sound a bit controversial, that maybe Venus is also related with victory. Maybe one can associate Venus, the planet, that piece of rock out there. Maybe you can associate that planet with Victoria, with Nike, with victory. And having looked at various charts, I do think that there is an association between Venus and victory. So you could say that Mars is a planet of war, but Venus is a planet of victory. And I know that's controversial, and you might say, oh, well, you should look at an asteroid, you should look at where Pallas is. I looked at where Pallas is. Pallas is nowhere, isn't in a particularly spectacular position. And I think that Venus is a happy planet, perhaps a triumphant planet, and it is a victorious planet. And so with Venus exactly on the midheaven, in the new moon immediately before the bombing of Nagasaki, that to my mind makes a fair amount of sense, but you might have a different view. But key point about this new moon is that the sun and the moon were exactly on 15 degrees Leo. It was 6-minute orb, and it was aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and obviously the Aries point as well. So a second unfortunate, tragic event that happened on August the 9th was the murder of Sharon Tate. I didn't want to spend too long on this event, particularly as I have covered it several times before. But here is a chart for the murder. So I think that the break-in took place just after midnight on August the 9th. So I've gone for 12:15 a.m. August the 9th, 1969. And I'm not saying that the chart in itself is particularly descriptive of what happened. I mean, the moon in Cancer was exactly square Jupiter in Libra. And if we got the time right, we've got Neptune on a descendant. You could say that Venus was close to Black Moon Lilith, but not exactly on true Black Moon Lilith. I suppose Sharon Tate was this iconic star, and she was murdered, and she might be represented by Venus, and then you've got Black Moon Lilith, and so I suppose you've got a bit of a fit there. Oh, Chiron. Okay, Chiron is square Venus, and I suppose Chiron is a wound, Venus is Sharon Tate, and I suppose this wound of Sharon Tate's murder, in a way, America still hasn't got over it. Even though it was 55 years ago, it's still a very traumatic event, the murder of Tate and of Sharon Tate and others. And I suppose Chiron square Venus and Black Moon Lilith fairly close to Venus. I suppose that just indicates how traumatic it actually was. And so those are a few thoughts about the actual timing of the event. Then I just want to go over again the connection between Sharon Tate and Charles Manson, because it's just quite interesting. I don't think Sharon Tate ever met Charles Manson, but still, Charles Manson. There we go. There are these sort of weird linkages between the two of them. I mean, Charles Manson had his Black Moon Lilith at 2920 Cancer, and Sharon Tate had her Black Moon Lilith at 0 degrees 43 Leo. So their Black Moon Liliths were very close to one another. And look at Charles Manson's North Node. I mean, this is really quite disturbing, because Charles Manson's North Node conjunct the Moon. He had North Node very close to the conjunction of the Moon, and it was on her Sun. So it's almost saying, in some very perverse way, that Sharon Tate was part of Charles Manson's destiny. You don't really want to hear that, do you? I mean, that is not what you want to hear, but that is one way of interpreting it. And I suppose you could just see it as a connection. If you look at the German schools of astrology, Ebertin and Witter, North Node is just a connection. So I suppose there is just a connection between Sharon Tate and Charles Manson. So there are certainly things going on now which I think raise some important questions. And there's his South Node. His South Node is on her Pluto, so she has this Pluto Black Moon Lilith conjunction. It's a fairly wide conjunction, but his South Node picks up on it all. So I think there's just there are some interesting and perhaps disturbing connections between the two charts. But really, that's all I want to say about the Manson murders. And I want to then look at the resignation of Richard Nixon. So Richard Nixon gave his resignation speech on the 8th of August, and he gave his intention to resign. And Richard Nixon actually resigned on August the 9th, 1974 at 11:35. So 11:35 a.m. on August the 9th was the moment in which Gerald Ford became president. And in terms of what was happening, we see Venus is on. Remember we saw Venus on the midheaven with the Nagasaki chart. We see Venus on the midheaven again. We see Venus on the midheaven here. So Gerald Ford was a Cancerian. Looking at Gerald Ford's chart, Gerald Ford had his sun at 21. Gerald Ford had his IC at 24 Cancer, and he had his sun at 21 Cancer. So, in other words, this Venus was right on was fairly close to Gerald Ford's sun, and it was fairly close to his IC. So Venus, you can perhaps see the moment Gerald Ford becomes president. So it happened with a Venus transit. And this chart does link quite powerfully with the chart of the United States. And if we look at the USA chart, so in the middle we've got the USA chart. On the outer wheel we have the chart for the moment that Ford became president. But I know he was inaugurated a bit later, but that moment Nixon resigned, Ford became president. And at that moment, Black Moon Lilith, our friend Black Moon Lilith, was at 2731 Aquarius. So that was exactly on the United States' moon. So it might seem a time of hope to have a new president, but there's a certain dis-ease about what happened. It's not an entirely comfortable event. And Saturn, at the time that Nixon resigned, Saturn was at 1322 Cancer. 1322 Cancer. The United States' sun is at 1319 Cancer. So Saturn was exactly on the United States' sun, exactly on the sun at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, I think this is just further evidence that that 1776 chart does work extremely well. So, there's important things going on. Look at Chiron. Chiron it's not exactly on the United States' Chiron, but we had a Chiron return just at the time of a Watergate crisis. And in fact, we had exact Chiron opposition Uranus happening there. So good evidence, I think, that the United States chart works. And of course, it was also the right thing to do for America. The United States' North Node North Node was at 6 Leo, and so the Mercury was at 8 Leo. So Mercury was conjunct America's North Node as this was happening. So that's the third event, and I also wanted to consider what this means as far as inaugurations are concerned. So this chart is when Gerald Ford became president. He was inaugurated later, I think around 12:05 in the afternoon. But this is when Gerald Ford actually became president, when he was legally, formally president when Nixon resigned. And so that is, in a way, the beginning of the Ford presidency. So I was just wondering, what was going on when Ford lost the election? So there was an election in 1976, just over 2 years later, when he was up against Jimmy Carter. So the Jimmy Carter the election in which Jimmy Carter became president was November the 2nd, 1976. I said it for 11 p.m. I'm just assuming that might have been the time when the results were coming in. So how did the inauguration, or rather Ford becoming president, link with the moment when he realized that he'd lost the presidency with that election? And so let's line things up. So we've got this is a chart of the Ford regime in the middle, and here we've got the November the 2nd chart. And look at Saturn. Saturn on November the 2nd, 1976 was at 16 Leo. So Saturn was exactly on the Ford regime's sun. And so this might give us some indication that we can look at the chart of a regime, maybe the chart of an inauguration, the chart someone becomes legally president, and then look at transits to get an idea about how it might actually work out. I mean, also look at the time of the Jimmy Carter's presidential victory in the presidential election. There was a Chiron Dark Moon Lilith conjunction at 29 Aries, and that was exactly on the Ford regime's moon. So Chiron was conjunct moon, Black Moon Lilith was conjunct moon, and so that really does kind of indicate that, you know, that might be a useful exercise in terms of trying to work out who is going to win or lose an election. So let's apply that to the Biden regime when Biden became president. Okay, I think he was sworn in later, but at noon, January the 20th, 2021, this is when Biden became president. And so it would be a good exercise then to look at the transits for this inauguration chart for November the 5th. So we'll put there we go. So we've got Biden's inauguration chart in the middle, and we've got the positions of the planets at 11 p.m. on November the 5th, which I think by that time, you know, the results should be coming in. And what strikes me, okay, if you want to be optimistic about it, you could say, well, Jupiter is conjunct the North Node. That's quite a good sign, isn't it, having Jupiter conjunct the North Node? Yet, perhaps of some concern would be the Sun. So the Sun, because presidents get inaugurated on January the 20th, is always at 0 degrees Aquarius. It's just the way it goes. And Mars is at 0 degrees 40 Leo. So Mars is opposition the Sun. I do not regard that Sun as that as being fortunate in any way, shape, or form. I think that is certainly unfortunate. That's not something to be too pleased about. And so Mars opposition Sun does indicate a kind of a disturbance there. That might indicate an election loss, or something that people are very angry about, or the regime is very angry about. Then we've got the Sun here. Now we have to be a bit careful here, because the trouble about midday chart, about having the presidency the new president always happening on January the 20th, except for Washington, D.C., is that the ascendant and the midheaven are always going to be pretty much the same, because it's happening at the same time of year at the same time. So you're always going to get Taurus rising when you get a new president. So you're always going to get Scorpio on a descendant. And presidential elections happen when the sun is in Scorpio. So you're always going to get the sun roughly around the descendant. But in this case, the sun is really close to the descendant. I mean, it's always going to be reasonably close at the time of the election, but this time it's very close. The descendant at noon was at 1410 Scorpio, and the sun is at 1414 Scorpio. And so when you've got the sun on a descendant, you do get the idea of the setting sun, that something is perhaps over. Okay, 1414 roughly as these results coming in. I don't know, I've gone for 11 p.m. But there is a sense of ending there, which may be more poignant here than it is normally with other elections. So looking at this chart, I'm not 100% convinced that this chart is too optimistic for Biden. I mean, I don't think it's quite strong enough to sort of declare at this early stage that it's going to be a Trump victory. But I think it's just more evidence that things maybe aren't looking too good for the Democrats in the presidential election. But I suppose to an extent you can take what you want. You might regard the transiting North Node on November the 5th on the Chiron, because Chiron was at 5 Aries on when Biden was inaugurated, and so the North Node is conjunct that. Maybe you'd regard that as being a good thing. Maybe not. I don't know. But it is of concern. Oh, notice also, interestingly, that Biden's moon, the moon at the time of the inauguration of Joe Biden was at 29 degrees 3 Aries. And when Ford became president, the exact moment that Ford became president, the moon was also at 29 degrees Aries. It was at 29 degrees 8 Aries. There's some sort of line-up there. I don't know. But I'm not ready perhaps to say for sure that Trump is going to win in November. But I think we're getting a picture now. I think it really is not looking good for the Democrats, is it? Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I hope you found this video of some interest. Today's August the 9th. August the 9th, historically, we've had 3 really difficult events in American history. I don't know if anything bad is going to happen today. Moon's in Libra. It's making a trine to Mars, trine to Jupiter. Maybe it's going to be fine. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you enjoyed the video, of course, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.